grading the Titans draft class. How do we see each of these rookies' role playing out this year and in the future years to come? Plus, did we notice any trends from this draft class and our overall thoughts on the Titans strategy? This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, and in partnership with 440 Sports and Broadway Sports Media. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. Justin, the draft finally in the rearview mirror. 4 months of speculation, 4 months of mock drafting, of getting excited about different prospects, falling in love with guys, hating some guys. Finally, we have a full draft class that you and I can sort of go through, review. We're going to grade each pick today, and we're going to discuss how we see these guys fitting into the Titans roster, what their role's going to be, mostly for their rookie season, but then we might do a little projecting beyond this season for some guys that we think have, long-term starter upside. Justin, how is it going?
Doing well. Excited that the dust is finally settling here on this draft class. Titans end up picking 9 players. Remember, they went into the draft with only 8 picks. Borgonzi did a great job finding a third rounder when he didn't have one initially. We always talked about that. They did trade down, went down quite a bit, 17 spots, right? But that's what nabbed them a third round pick. Excited to talk about it, man. A lot of fun details on this Titans draft class.
Absolutely. And just so you guys know, we're going to breeze through the first 3 picks a little bit faster than we normally would. That's because we have separate isolated videos on each of those picks on the channel. Instant reactions to the Titans drafting Cam Ward, Titans drafting Femi Oladejo, and the Titans drafting Kevin Winston Jr. So those are up on the channel. If you missed them, go back and check them out. We will still hit them today, obviously, because we got to talk about what their roles are going to be, but maybe not as in-depth as the rest of the class that we haven't covered at all yet. So without further ado, Justin, let's get to it, starting with the first pick of the draft, the most obvious selection, the only mock draft pick that 100% of mock drafters got right, unless they are just
not Stoney Keeley. He had Willie Lampkin, I think, number
Willie
one.
Lampkin, who went undrafted, I believe. But yes, we will get into it with Cam Ward, the 1.01 pick of the draft, quarterback out of Miami. Look, our thoughts on Cam Ward on this channel are pretty well documented going back, I think, to January we did in a Cam Ward no matter what episode about 4 months ago. So we have been on this beat for a while. Let's start with our grades for the pick. I'll let you start. What do you grade the Titans drafting Cam Ward first overall?
Yeah, try not to be, too much of a homer here. I went with an A, right? Like it's he's been super impressive as a person, right? I think that stands alone in the evaluation. Every press conference I've watched since then, all the radio appearances, he was on 3HL. He's been everywhere. It's just been outstanding stuff, right? It's like, and he's a complex person, right? Like, it's hard to explain. Like, sometimes you see the emotion in him and you love it. And you're like, wow, what a nice human being. And then, like, the clip of him trash talking Shedeur Sanders, you're like, this guy's a dog. Like, I couldn't believe, I know it's all in jest, good fun, but when he told Shedeur, like, they gave you an award for completion percentage, all you did was throw bubble screens. Like, I was cracking up. Like, there's always some truth in every joking insult, right? So it's like, he's a complex guy, but you love that about him. He's an absolute dog. He's an alpha. But he's also in touch with his, I showed my sister-in-law the clip of him she started crying when he said the child in me who wanted it when he was on the draft stage interview. That wasn't shown, obviously, on any broadcast.
It was shown on NFL Network. A lot of people, it seems, were watching on the ESPN broadcast where they, with the first overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select quarterback Cam. Well, okay, guys, let's talk about Shedeur Sanders. When's he going? Like, that's what it was like on ESPN.
Pick in the draft. Anyway,
but on NFL Network, he actually got a little bit more. I was watching NFL Network because they're my former employer. But anyway, continue.
And I was watching NFL Network too. But he deserves the A grade that I've given. Really, really in love here with the person, and the player's dynamic at times. Got to clean up a couple things, but super dynamic. The off script ability. So we've said it all, but I'm going with a strong A. I've been blown away throughout the process by the person.
Nice. Yeah. So I went with an A+++ because I fell in love with Cam Ward in January. I sent that text on January 7th. The heart wants what the heart wants, and my heart wants Cam Ward. I tweeted out a screenshot of that text that I sent to our group chat if you guys missed it. But yeah, I've been all in on this pick since the first tape I turned on. The first game I watched was Syracuse. The second game I watched was Cal. Two of his more impressive tapes, to be fair, to the process. Some of his best games this year, but those were the first two I watched, so I was immediately enamored. I do think there's an argument to be made that, for your case of dropping off the pluses and just making it an A, that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter might be more quote-unquote sure things. But when you don't have a quarterback and you're picking first overall and you have a chance to take the top guy in the class and you vet him as much as the Titans did and you fall in love with him, as you said, the person almost as much, if not more, than you fell in love with the player on the field, a belief in his work ethic, his continued ability to improve over the course of his career, the way he connects with his teammates. I love the reports that we got that he basically called every Titans draft pick, especially, I'm not sure if he called the defensive guys, but maybe he did. There was reports that he called all of the picks on the offensive side of the ball so quickly. Gunnar Helm was still on the phone with the Titans when Cam Ward gave him a call. So he's super excited to get to work with his teammates, and I just love the person here that I think is going to be the face of the Titans franchise. I think he has a chance to be featured on the league graphics next to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson if he reaches his ceiling. I think he has a chance to have a Jaden Daniels type rookie season. I don't think he will. Like, if I'm being realistic and honest, I don't think he will, but the chance is there, and that's what I think he gets so excited about this pick. Yeah.
I've said this before a couple times on this show, but I'll say it again. Where everyone got Josh Allen wrong, and I've heard this time and time again, and it's different because, Cam Ward goes number one, Allen was considered a reach, but where a lot of people were wrong on Josh Allen was the work ethic, right? Like, they didn't realize that he's a bit of a psycho when it comes to wanting to improve. And Cam Ward strikes me as a bit psychotic when it comes to work ethic and improving, right? The clip from his father talking to him on draft night saying,
that was great.
I know you're going to just ask for the playbook, but as your father, I challenge you to enjoy this moment.
You know what he did the night he got drafted? Daryl Colbert, his private quarterbacks coach, posted this on Instagram. Cam Ward apparently received the Titans playbook shortly after he was drafted. At 2:30 a.m., Daryl Colbert posted an Instagram story of Cam Ward out on the practice field throwing. That's what he did the night he got drafted. He went in the middle of the night and continued working on his craft. Like, that's the guy the Titans got. You love every ounce of that. As far as his role goes, he's the starting quarterback for the Titans, obviously for this entire season, assuming he doesn't get injured, fingers crossed there. And projecting him forward, he's the starting quarterback for this franchise for the next decade plus. That's the goal and the hope. And obviously we don't know that will 100% happen, but I have a lot of faith that I am a person as a fan who tends towards the optimism side of things very often. And, we felt good about Will Levis. We came on here with Liam Cohen and broke down his film, and Liam Cohen spoke very highly of Will Levis's abilities. But we always said, even with as much praise as we gave Will Levis and as much as excitement as we had, we always said, but there is this issue. He doesn't have a great feel in the pocket, and that's something that can be really damning for a quarterback. So, like, as much as we were excited, we always couched it with, like, some serious red flag concern there. With Cam Ward, and maybe I'm crazy, call me crazy if I'm crazy, I feel the way I felt as a Mavs fan when they drafted Luka Doncic. That it was like, there were question marks about his ability to, step up to the NBA level from Europe and all that, blah, blah, blah. And he had his doubters as well, which is kind of funny to look back on thinking that a player like that had doubters. But I just felt like this is it. This is the guy. They got him. And I feel the same way now. Maybe I'm going to look really foolish and naive in a few months or years, but I feel very, very good about this pick.
Los Angeles Lakers superstar guard Luka Doncic just had to rub that in for you. No, I feel, I think the thing about Cam that maybe we're not going to couch it as much as we did with Will Levis is the red flag isn't pocket presence, right? And that is so important because maybe I'm overcorrecting because it's such a nightmare to watch Will Levis in the pocket. But Marcus Mariota had bad pocket presence as well. Like, Titans have seen a lot of quarterbacks who didn't live up to their potential due to bad pocket presence, to the point where, for me, it's become like my most important trait, right? Like, it is just so important to have good presence in the pocket. If you don't have it, you're not going to succeed at the NFL level. These guys are too good, too fast, too strong, right? And for me, I think that's what makes me most optimistic about Cam Ward. It's that we know he's dynamic. We know he's got playmaking ability. We know he's got a good arm. But the pocket presence for me is what really, really, makes me believe. Because remember, I had hesitations in the beginning. I was worried about the interceptions, the turnover-worthy plays. Those are still things But the pocket presence to me is just an equalizer, and the big play and how often it leads to big plays.
Yeah, we talked about non-negotiables and what Brian Callahan had on his non-negotiables list. For me, number one is ability to maneuver the pocket, sense pressure, get out of it, get the ball out before it arrives, manipulate it so that you have extra time to throw. Yes, and he does it at a very high level. All right, so we spent over almost 10 minutes there on Cam Ward. That wasn't necessarily the plan, but hey, I can't stop talking about him, Justin. All right, with the second pick in the draft, the Titans, or their second pick in the draft, number 52 overall, the Titans take edge out of UCLA, Femi Oladejo. We did, as I said, a whole video on Femi right when he was picked, but we can talk about, I think, more now our grade for the pick and what we see his role being this year, because this is kind of an interesting one. Obviously, if you missed our show, we'll quickly say he's a guy that converted from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher, I believe, in week 4 of the season. He did not have an off season to make a positional switch. He did it in a week's time of game planning, right? So that on its own is incredibly impressive. Something that we didn't say on our last show because we hadn't listened to his press conference yet. He said that he felt his abilities as an edge rusher really started to unlock during his week of work at the Senior Bowl, where he received NFL level positional coaching, technique coaching on how to play that position. And I think, as a guy who is converting into this position, he has something that I think is sort of, as we're talking about non-negotiables for Cam Ward, something that is a non-negotiable for edge play in the NFL is ability to generate power in your rush and set the edge against the run. But that power element, he has that power element. Does he need to refine his pass rush skill set, his arsenal of moves, as they say, like using his hands correctly, the dips, the chops, all those elements of pass rushing? Yeah, that's where he needs a lot of refinement. But he has power as a baseline to start from. And, if you have a good bull rush, you can do a lot of things with that and off that counter off that. So I feel like his floor is a little higher than maybe we gave him credit for, also because of the high character that we've seen demonstrated. So all that said, I gave this pick a B grade. I think obviously fills a need. I do think he was probably at the top of their board, the horizontal positional value board. So I credit them for taking the guy there. The high character stuff, a locker room guy, foundational culture resetter, all of that is good. Were there other players on the board that might have had a more instant impact as rookies? Probably, and that's why it's not a higher grade for me. Is there some bust potential here? Yeah, there is some bust potential here because he's basically a projection to the next level. But we like his traits and we like his character and his motor. So for those reasons, I gave it a B. What did you give this pick?
I went borderline B minus B, right? Just the rawness makes me go maybe a little under you. But it's funny, when you watch him and you talk about it, he looks more the body type, the skill set is what I'm referring to. He looks more like an edge than an off-ball backer, doesn't he? Because how many off-ball backers convert speed to power, right, at the level that he does? How many off-ball backers have that length? He uses his length well. For a guy that's going to be a raw edge, at least there's a floor, I would say, because he's a pretty good run defender. Like you said, he sets the edge. He keeps contained. I don't think he's going to be a liability in the run game. So to me,
right.
He looks more like an edge than he does off-ball backer. So it's interesting. He spent most of his career playing, inside linebacker. So the one caveat that I have here, and I said it on the emergency episode, so I won't say it too much, is how much the Titans need him to play right away. That's where right. I wish he was going, this guy was in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, where they've got a deep group of edge rushers, and you don't got to be concerned about how many snaps he's got to play right away. Then you might feel a bit better about it. And maybe Tennessee is going to bring him along slowly. But the truth is they can't really afford to, right? With Arden Key and Draymond Jones there and nothing else. I mean, they still could go sign a veteran. There are some guys that could give them snaps this year in free agency. But if they don't, you need Femi to play almost right away. And that can be tough when he's still learning on the fly a little bit, right? So that's my one concern. But again, I said it, I got to know this kid well throughout this process. I love the personality. I love the work ethic. I love the motor. And I think the explosive traits are there. The length, the body type, the skill set, power in his game. I think he's athletic enough to do a better job developing the rest of the arsenal. I think he's athletic enough to hit a club swim. I think he's athletic enough to hit a rip. I think he's athletic enough to develop a spin move even. I think he can be dynamic with that. So we'll see how it comes along.
Yeah, I agree. the thing for me though, the reason it's also another reason it's a B, sorry, is when you look at the consensus big board rankings and where Femi Oladejo was picked, it does appear to be a reach. Now we can say that now. Anything calling anyone a reach or a faller right now is just like based on preconceived opinions, and all that will change after a season of play in the NFL. But they didn't get great value for this pick. I do like that if they had their eye on this guy and they were picking at 35, you're definitely not taking him at 35. So part of this pick is also the trade down that netted them an extra third, which means it gets a little bit of bonus points, I think, in my opinion, that you had your eye on someone that you really like. You don't take him too early. You trade down. You still take him kind of early, but at least it's more palatable that way.
I get it with the consensus big board, but I'll say this. I don't think it's as early as people thought it was. I always thought he was going to be day 2. I saw him in first round mock drafts. I know you got to take that with a grain of salt, but I know for a fact, he was mocked to the Washington Commanders a little bit at 29. I was told by a source that was in play. Like Washington really liked him and Dan Quinn really liked him. So I don't think it was as much of a reach as people think. Like if he gets by the Titans at 52, I still think he's in like the top 65, probably. This is not a guy that was going to go 100 and something. People just project that because they're like, oh, position switch, But the NFL, they loved the motor. They loved the personality, the work ethic, and they loved the potential. So I don't think it was as much of a reach as most people probably think it was.
Yeah, and let's finish up our Femi convo here by talking about what we see his role as. You hinted at it a little bit already. The Titans' edge group currently consists of Arden Key, Draymond Jones, Lorenzo Carter, Jalen Harrell. He's going to have to play. He's not a starter, I don't think, at least day one, he's not a starter.
Yeah, Arden Key and Draymond Jones are proven guys, not to cut you off, but that's your base guy. That's your base defense guys, right?
Absolutely. I think he can be a special teams contributor from day one, assuming that he picks that up quickly and understands his assignments there, and if they don't want to take too much off of they don't want to put too much on his plate. Maybe they don't ask him to play special teams right away, but as a backup player in the NFL, almost all of them that make rosters have to contribute somewhere, and special teams is usually that somewhere. I think he could be a situational player. He's going to rotate in on that defensive line to keep the other guys fresh, because the other guys aren't necessarily every down big time players either. Yep. It's not Myles Garrett that you're taking off the field for Femi Oladejo. So I do like that he's going to be able to rotate in and not be relied upon to play an every down role, but he might be relied upon a little too much for where he currently is at in his development.
Agreed.
So that's the role we see for him though. And future projection role, you hope that he develops into your starting edge across from whoever's on the other side.
Arden Key, Lorenzo Carter, Draymond Jones, contract years. I wouldn't bet any money. I'd bet $0 on any of them being back in 2026. So edge is still a huge need, and they really need Femi to be a guy in 2026 as a sophomore.
Absolutely. All right, third pick, 82nd overall, Kevin Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State. Now, we had pretty different grades on this one, Justin, so I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, not very different.
Yeah, I went with a B. I don't think yours is going to probably be a bit higher. I don't think a B is a bad grade. I'm excited about the pick. They took safety a little earlier than I thought they would, but then again, I said it a couple times. That's one of those sneaky spots they might take earlier than we expect them to, so I wasn't totally stunned. Only 28 career games, only 15 starts, so there's a little bit of newness and rawness here. Remember, he probably would be like a 30-game starter if he didn't have an injury this bad, or at least a 25-game starter. But he only started 2 games in 2024 because of the season-ending injury he suffered very early. 2023 was his first year as a starter, and I think he started 13 games, and he played as a reserve the year before. He didn't start any games, of course, being a young guy. So 15 career starts here. There's rawness. There's an injury he's coming off of. I'm comfortable with the pick. I think they got pretty good value at 82. I'm going to guess he was a top 50 player on their board, borderline, because there are people I trust in this industry that loved this player. I think Football Focus, even a couple guys I worked with over at the Draft Network had a first-round grade on him. This guy's really, really popular in the scouting community. I'm going to keep this short. We got a whole episode on him. We got a little long-winded on the others. 2026 starter, hopefully a contributor this year, hopefully healthy enough where if they have an injury in front of him, he could come in and play. But for me, he's definitely a starter in 2026. I hope they re-sign Amani Hooker next offseason, because I think him and Kevin Winston Jr. would pair really well together at safety. Because I think, K. Winston, really good in the box. I love what Amani Hooker does back there deep in the secondary. And it's similar to Xavier Woods. I think that's their line of thinking. Xavier Woods plays his best ball near the line of scrimmage. He's over 30. They can cut him next offseason, save a couple bucks. I think Winston is a great like-for-like replacement with a similar skill set.
Don't call him K-Win or whatever you just said. He goes by KJ. K Winston. He goes by KJ, Kevin Jr. So is it KJ Winston is what people call him. So KJ, look, I gave this grade an A. I think this was a tremendous pick. I understand what you're saying about, top 50 player on their board. He was probably sticking out at the top of their board. Like, this is a really talented player who was falling because he missed most of the season with an injury, out of sight, out of mind kind of thinking. He was tremendous in 2023. He has missed 2 tackles in his career in 28 games. 2 tackles. He has a chance. Obviously, this is all potential. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but he has a chance to be a high-level starter at safety in this league. His ability to play downhill, not just in the run game like you mentioned, but covering zones, over the middle of the field and diagnosing passes. Very instinctual, and he crashes hard. He's explosive downhill, crashing on passes that are in front of him. Now, he doesn't do as well moving backwards, which is why you're saying he should be playing close to the line of scrimmage. Will probably be in that hook curl zone area, the robber role in pass coverage. But he can also man up pretty decently and take on that tight end responsibility, something Kevin Byard used to do for this Titans team. I really like this pick. They talked about his football IQ. He was a team captain at Penn State last year. He's only 21 years old, so he's still young and still developing. Both of these day 2 picks the Titans made are young, 21-year-old, early declare underclassmen. They're not, Cam Ward, 5th-year senior, right? They're not like that. These are young guys that are still growing as football players, and obviously Cam Ward is still growing as a football player as well, but I don't mean that to say he's not. But these guys are this is the upside, day 2, potential high-level starter. I'm going to read, as we close out our KJ discussion here, something that Rob Rang at Fox Sports wrote in his write-up of grading the Titans draft. Edge rusher Oluwafemi Oladejo and safety Kevin Winston Jr. show the kind of flashes on tape that suggest each could ultimately prove among the very best at their respective positions from this class. So high upside swings here, but I also think something really interesting, I believe it was Dave Ziegler, who the Titans sent out their quadri of other former general manager, now assistant general manager people to do the press conferences while the Borgonzi was still and Brinker were still in the war room making moves and picks and stuff. Something that Ziegler said was, when you bet on a guy with traits who's still a developmental player, one of the most important aspects of that is, do we believe they have the character, the passion and love for football, and the work ethic to actually get there? Because there's a ton of guys who have developmental potential, but they don't have the character and the will. Think about a guy I'm going to throw Dorial Green Beckham at you. Traitsy, high upside guy, but didn't have his head on straight, didn't have that passion for the game and the work ethic to actually... Who?
Isaiah Wilson. Don't all tackles wish they were 6'6", 330 and
bang? Great example.
Whatever he was, 340, 350, and could move like that.
Absolutely, that's a great example. So that's why I'm really betting on these 2 players as well. Is that they believe that they know these guys aren't finished products, but they believe they have the personality traits to get them over the top. So I agree with you. 2026 starter. He'll play a little bit in 2025. If somebody gets hurt, he'll probably be the first guy off the bench, assuming it's not weeks 1 or 2, and assuming his ACL is fully recovered. They also said after they drafted him that their doctors believe, they've reviewed his knee, it was a partially torn ACL, not a fully torn ACL. They believe he'll be ready for training camp, which is a huge positive sign. I think he's also a special teams contributor. I think he could be one of their best special teams players as a rookie, assuming the football IQ side of it isn't too hard for him to grasp, just because of the athleticism, the sure tackling ability. And I think that's where we see him the most in 2025 is on every punt coverage team, on every kick coverage team, flying down the field, making tackles on special teams. All right, with their next pick, the Titans had the first pick of day 3, pick 103 overall. They take Chimere Dike. This pick surprised a lot of people. Jalen Royals was sticking out at the top of the board for most of us in the media who cover this team and who all, glob onto the same takes. And Jalen Royals was just like the guy. But I mean, I really liked Jalen Royals. I thought he was going to be the pick, honestly. So this one was sort of a curveball out of left field to me. It's being called the Titans' biggest reach of this draft class, according to, again, those consensus big boards, whatever, grain of salt with all that. But what do you think? What did you grade this pick?
Yeah, I went with like a C, and that's probably being a bit generous.
I think
it was definitely my least favorite pick they made. Look, we know why they made it. Size, check, very athletic, 4.3 40 at the combine is just crazy. Did a good job taking the top off this year for the Florida Gators, even though they didn't really have a good quarterback this past season. But so there, there's a little bit of production there. He never was a big time producer, but career highs this year, about 740 receiving yards. Again, did a better job getting vertical. He's got the size and clearly the long speed for it based on the 40 time. It's still a little raw, doesn't run a full route tree, not very technically advanced. Drops have been a problem, 17 career drops for Chimere Dike. So I've got concerns here. I get like the height, weight, speed thing, but I think there were better options. Maybe they went with the highest upside option, but I think I would have gone a bit safer here. I would have liked to get someone that I have more confidence in the ability to contribute right away. He also returned punts, by the way. That's something that's going undermentioned in this media pool. So that's a possibility for him to contribute on special teams as well. But this was the first receiver they took, right? And they need to get a receiver, not a special teams guy. They don't have any receivers. So I thought they could have done better here. They make up for it a bit later, in my opinion. We'll get to those. But I thought they could have done better here. It was my least favorite pick they made. Hopefully the height, weight, speed, hopefully he meets the potential. But I've got some concerns regarding, the overall makeup of his game.
Justin, we're going to talk about how, we hit on stuff and we sort of I don't want to say gloat, but we give ourselves pats on the back. Like, Cam Ward is a great example. We've been talking about him for months. I will do the same in the opposite realm. I saw his name floating around on Twitter, early, late Friday night, early Saturday morning, thinking about like who the Titans going to go with. And I literally, every time I saw his name in a tweet or whatever, I was like, okay, well, it's not going to be DK. Like, give me a break. They're not taking him at the top of the 4th round. I was wrong, and I will own that. I didn't say that anywhere, but I thought it, and I was
I had a
very wrong.
6th round grade. I think the night before the draft, do you remember that before the 4th round, one of us in the group chat, I think they might have had a source tip him off, so I won't reveal who, said, what about Chimere Dike? What if they start with him tomorrow? Someone said that to us the night before, and I said, 6th round maybe. Like, I don't think he's going in top of the 4th.
I think Stoney Keeley was a big fan of this pick. And look, he has traits. And one of the things they said in the press conference after they picked him was they love his inside-outside versatility. And maybe that's why he was the guy at the top of their board here.
I think, at Florida.
He played outside and inside. He played a decent amount at both spots. And he's, really effective with that long speed. He's really effective on those post routes, deep crossers, things that allow him to take advantage of his ability to just run away from people. And he has good size. He's not, for a guy that kind of profiles as a gadgety kind of player, he's not a 5'8", 5'9". He's over 6 feet tall. So he's a big guy with a lot of size and a lot of speed. He's a pure explosive athlete. And I think that they're looking for somebody that can threaten the defense over the top, that can take a screen to the house if the blocking is good enough. And they kind of have a player in that now in Chimere Dike. I think I'll say my grade for this pick, though, was a C-. I think, like you said, this was probably their objectively worst pick in the draft. That doesn't mean he can't go on to be an amazing player, but you look at his college production. This is a 5th-year senior, so the opposite of the guys we were just talking about. His yardage per season in college, obviously, as a true freshman, 189 yards, nothing to write home about. 272 the next year, 689 the next year. In 2023, in 11 games, he had 328 total yards. Now, his first 4 years were at Wisconsin. He did the grad transfer thing to Florida last year where he had a career best season, 783 yards. But here's his touchdown numbers by season. 1, 1, 6, 1, 2. So not a tremendous guy who, for someone with that kind of breakaway speed, I expect him to at least have like a handful of touchdowns where he just runs. Not a lot of
production, period.
Not a lot of production. And, his best season, 783 yards, 42 catches. Like, this is a guy that might make a handful of explosive plays throughout the season as a rookie where you're like, okay, there's potential here. But I feel like that's kind of all he's ever going to be. Like, I don't know if he ever develops into like a reliable wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. Now, he does remind me a little bit This is the absolute maximum best case scenario, and I don't think this is going to happen. But he does remind me a little bit of Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's college production as a true freshman, he had 0 receptions for 0 yards despite playing in 12 games. 2016, 2017, 2018, 114 yards in 2016, 436 yards in 2017, 701 yards in 2018. So Dike's best season was arguably more productive than Terry McLaurin. Now McLaurin had 11 touchdowns.
Right there.
McLaurin had 11 touchdowns that last year, and the target competition in Ohio State's offense when McLaurin was there was obviously very good. Like everyone that played receiver there went to the NFL. So Dike wasn't competing with anyone like that. His quarterback wasn't good either, though, and you mentioned that. I do wonder what they saw in him that made them say, we got to take this guy here at the top of the 4th round. If this was your target, there had to be a trade on the table here to move back. I mean, it's the first pick of day 3. Somebody had their eye on somebody, right? So I don't love the process that they got to with this pick. I get the inside-outside versatility argument, but the speed, but there were other speed guys who have been more productive in college. Maybe we'll be eating our words and he'll prove us wrong. This gives me a little bit of Des Fitzpatrick vibes. I don't know if he's going to be that much of a complete bust, because I do think he's going to compete for and potentially win both the kick returner and punt returner job, which is a valuable role and gives him a place on this roster. Do you spend a 4th round pick on that guy when you're in a rebuilding team that has a lot of holes to focus on? I don't know. That's why I say I don't love the process, but that's where I'm at with this pick.
They've also got competition at those spots. So
they do.
It's not going to be a guarantee that he wins those jobs, but yeah, I didn't love it. My least favorite. I don't see him ever developing into like a all around, as you said, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I think the best case scenario is when you get a speed check out there, right? You got a corner in the game that you don't think can match him stride for stride, and not a lot of guys can. But you get that type of corner in the game, and you want to test him deep. Then you put him on the field, and he's going to kind of play that sub package role, if you will. Where we want to go deep. Let's put him in the game and see if he could win a foot race, but. I wanted Jalen Royals here. I mean, I never think they're going to do exactly what you want them to do, especially when you're talking about the 103rd pick. You so rarely nail those. I wasn't surprised. And look, the NFL thought, the same of Jalen Royals, right? He lasted all the way. Of course, there's the Kansas City Chiefs that end up getting him. I'm curious to see how that worked out.
Of course.
I think he went like 128th or something like that. So he went about 25 picks after Dike. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, for me, there were other options I liked better.
Yeah, same. All right, well, let's move on to the Titans' next pick. Round 4, pick 120. They take Gunnar Helm, the tight end out of Texas. And Justin, outside of Cam Ward, this was my favorite pick in the class. And I'm obviously extremely biased as somebody who went to Texas, who watches every Texas game every year for the past 20 years. But Gunnar Helm is a real player. And I think a value in the 4th round. This is a guy who... last season, he set the single season record in the history of Texas Longhorns football for a tight end, most receptions in a season, most receiving yards in a season. This is a school that has put a number of guys into the NFL. This is a school that had a 2nd round draft pick at tight end the year before. The reason Gunnar Helm didn't have a very productive career until his final season at Texas. Jatavion Sanders went in the 2nd round of the Panthers last year, was playing ahead of him. Gunnar Helm outproduced him. He outproduced every tight end in the history of Texas for a single season. That is a pretty impressive thing. So is this guy going to be a tight end 1? Maybe at some point. I would say that if that ever happens, it's 3 to 4 years down the line. Tight end is traditionally a position that develops much slower than other positions. Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers accepted there as guys who produced right away in the league. Sam Laporta, another one. But those guys are fewer and far between. I think Gunnar Helm has a chance to be a really good player in this league. Maybe not a great player, but a very solid player that is going to be around for a long time as like a tight end 2, fringe tight end 1 in the league. And I love this pick. So obviously, as a Texas alum, I gave this pick an A minus, because I think, there's other positions they could have attacked here, especially after the only receiver they drafted so far is Dike. So I think that maybe I would have looked at another position here, but as far as the value for the type of player you're getting and bringing into your locker room, I love Gunnar Helm. I loved him as a Texas fan. He always seemed to make a big play at the most crucial times. He's great at finding space and zone coverage. He's great at working off script, which you need if Cam Ward is going to be your quarterback. So what was your grade for this pick?
I gave this pick a B. You said a lot of what I was going to say. I think he's just a solid football player. He can block in line. He's sneaky athletic enough to make plays in space. And he's one of those guys where, you hope one day, Titans probably aren't there yet, but when you have a good receiving core, he's one of those guys that takes advantage of being forgotten about, right? Like
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that makes a big play when you don't expect him to because the defense is focusing elsewhere, and all of a sudden he's open 25 yards down the field. Like he's just a damn good football player. Again, can block in line. I'm really curious to see what his role is this year because I think he's going to compete for snaps. This Titans tight end room is so interesting. Even with him there, I still say Chig is the best athlete probably from a pass catching perspective. And based on the lack of pass catchers the Titans have in the offense, Chig is probably going to play a pretty big role. At least I think so. And he came on strong under Brian Callahan at the end of the year. Chig did. So I think they're going to continue finding ways to get him involved in the passing game. I really like Josh Wiley. Maybe I'm a little too high on him, but I thought he's shown a lot of potential when healthy. Remember, he's had some injuries, and I think that, he's had a couple concussions. I think this pick probably factors into that too, because I think Gunnar Helm is a little bit similar in the sense where they can both block and they're both good at good enough at making plays in the passing game. So when they're all healthy, that's what I'm curious to see is who plays what role. Because I think all three of them, neither of them are exceptional tight end ones, but neither of them are scrubs either. They're all good football players. And of course, Chig, very different body type from Gunnar Helm and Josh Wiley. But I think Helm and Wiley are a little bit similar. So it'll be curious to see how those snaps get divided. But I do think he comes in and has an impact, honestly, even, right away. And by that, I mean, again, coming in, competing for snaps, being a good blocker, making a couple plays here and there in the passing game. This is a good quality football player, and it's a good pick.
And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here with this next take, but because I think he's going to have sort of a slower rookie season. That's just sort of what you see from day 3 tight ends in the league.
And they got good players in the room.
And they have good players in the room. But something that he does really well and that Steve Sarkisian schemed up for him a lot at Texas was finding ways to get open up the seam. And what have we talked about Cam Ward's best ability as a quarterback is? It's throwing it up the seam on time accurately, big explosive types of plays, and he can do that. And when you start looking at what Cam Ward had in college, he had Elijah Arroyo, a very athletic, pass-first catching tight end, similar to Chig Okonkwo, I think, skill set-wise. And then you look at the other tight ends. He had 2 other tight ends that he threw to a lot. There was the guy who's been in college for 12 years or 25 years. What's his name? McCormick. I think he was a 7th-year guy, but that, was like a reliable red zone weapon for Cam. And he had another tight end that I can't remember his name right now, but he's the guy that he threw the ball to on that the famous Virginia Tech play where he ducked out of 2 tackles and got it to a third tight end. So he's used to
over to him right at the line of scrimmage.
Exactly. So there's a lot of similarities, I think, to what Cam Ward worked with at Miami in his tight end room and to what the Titans have in their tight end room here, which I don't know if that was intentional, but it's going to be something that helps your quarterback transition to the league. And I also think Gunnar Helm follows a very clear trend here of being a guy who is high character, great teammate, team first type of guy, loves football. And one of the more interesting things to me about this pick was they asked him in his pre-draft or his post-draft Zoom, were the Titans a team you were expecting to, maybe have some interest in you? And he goes, no, actually, I was pretty surprised when it was Tennessee that picked me, but I love it and I'm happy to be here. So, and he was the one that Cam Ward called while he was still on the phone with the Titans, telling him that they were going to make him the pick. So, love this pick. I think he has a chance to be, a quality player on this roster for many years to come. High floor with, I think, some high upside as well if he continues to develop as a pass catcher. All right, Justin, we will move on to the next pick. This one, the Titans they came into this draft with 2 4ths, 2 5ths, and 2 6ths. Well, they made a third 4th-round pick selection here, moving up from their 5th-round pick, dropping down from one of their 6th-round picks. And they trade up for Stanford receiver Eric Ayomanor.
Canadian, by the way. Say that
Canadian,
first.
Yes, a Canadian receiver who played his college career at Stanford. Another early declare guy, younger guy, which you like to see those guys entering the league. He's one of the few early declare receivers in this entire class. There weren't very many of them in this class, which is kind of rare, but also speaks to not being a super strong class at the top with potential wide receiver 1s, but a lot of wide receiver 2 types. Ayomanor, his highlights, this is what I'll say. His highlights make him look like the best receiver in the draft. Now, the consistency is not exactly there. He had a better season in 2023 than he did in 2024. That's not usually a good trend, but his quarterback play last year was abysmal, and his role in Stanford's offense last year was basically sprint downfield, and our quarterback's going to chuck a duck up and see if you can come down with it, because that was most of what he was asked to do on a down-to-down basis. He famously had 296 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2023 when Stanford played Colorado, matched up on Travis Hunter. I believe like 150 or so of those yards, of those 296 yards, came directly matched up against Hunter. The best highlight is the one where Hunter's in great defending position, and Ayomanor just uses his size and plucks the ball over the head. It looked like the Nate Washington catch in Titans history against the Lions in that very fun, super insane Music City Madness game. But he's got some ability to make contested catches. He is a deep threat with speed and size. Some people say that he reminds them of A.J. Brown, not in a lot of ways, but with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's kind of a bowling ball, tank, difficult to tackle type of guy. And the best part about this player to me is that he profiles as an X receiver. And the Titans do not have an X receiver on their roster. Now, I didn't necessarily love the player on tape. I think that he has a lot of traits and a lot of upside. His change of direction ability is subpar, which means that his ability to separate is never going to be elite, but his ability to make contested catches is there. He didn't make quite as many of them as I would have liked to see for a guy with his size. Again, the highlights are outstanding. One-handed grabs, mossing people, looks like the best receiver in the draft. The full tape, a lot less consistency, and that's something that is definitely a concern. But when you're taking a flyer on a guy in the 4th round, a guy who was projected by many to be a day 2 pick, I gave this grade an A-. Even though I don't necessarily love the player, I have to take my own ego out of this and say, I don't know fucking shit about shit, dude. I'm just doing my best as a guy watching tape in my freaking office here. I'm not talking to these prospects. They said they loved his football IQ. I did notice some snaps on his tape with him playing a big slot role too. So he has a little bit of inside-outside versatility to his game as well. I think that the upside makes the pick well worth it, especially for a team that needs receivers and needs an X receiver in particular. And there's not a ton of X receivers in this draft class as a whole. So for that reason, I did go A-, which I think is a higher grade than maybe I would have given it if I'm purely basing it on my own evaluation of the player, which I don't think is fair to the process, because I'm right as often as I'm wrong. If not, sometimes I'm wrong more than I'm right. So anyway, back to you.
Yeah, you just gave people a reason to tune out of this show. Why do I watch these idiots? They don't know what they're talking about. No, I went with a B because I'm kind of mixing those things. I wasn't super high on the player on tape either. I do like this better than the DK pick. I think you agree. Me too. With that. No doubt about it. Even though it came
I think he's a better receiver than DK, which is crazy that they took him afterwards. But anyway,
I think so as well. But the NFL also knows how other teams value players typically, so they probably had a good feel that DK would go earlier, and they were right about that, right? Because they waited around, they traded up, and they still grabbed Ayomanor here. So I'll say this: I do like that he's got the size, can play X. So important. I wonder how quickly he comes in and competes for snaps. Maybe it's quickly. Normally you wouldn't as a 4th round pick, as the team's 3rd pick in the 4th round at that. But when you look at who can play X, I'm sure, DK could get a shot out there, but this kid's not as raw as DK is. So I think he comes in and makes a quicker impression on the coaching staff. And then what else do they have out there? Van Jefferson to play X? He's got a chance to come in and play a role. So the one caveat for me that bothers me is the highlight reels. They're a lot of fun. I rather have a guy get open and create a ton of separation than make a contested catch, right? I think we all know that. We all get excited about the contested catches because of the highlight reel nature of them. But I wish you were just open and caught the ball with no one around you, right? And I think there's a bit too much contested catch on his tape. And it's always a question about how that translates. I use this example. I'm going to use this example for the next 50 years. Are you T. Higgins or are you N'Keal Harry, right? Both those guys are contested catch guys to a degree. T. Higgins is really good and N'Keal Harry's not in the NFL, right? So it's really depends on which kind of route you go. But there are people who believe this pick has big time potential. I think it was, Jordan Schultz take with a grain of salt because he's an insider, but he wasn't tweeting about every 4th round pick. He tweeted after that one and said, "Oh my God, Cam Ward with Eric Ayomanor, this pairing is going to be so exciting." So there are people who think that this has home run potential. I like it better than the DK pick, certainly. And I'm curious, again, because of the size and the ability to play X, I wonder how quickly he can come in and play a role.
Yeah, I think he doesn't have to play a role right away because I think
he doesn't have to.
The Titans did a nice job. The Tyler Lockett edition obviously helps a lot, but the Titans did a nice job coming in. And let me read some analysis that Warren Sharp posted out here. This is sort of what I was talking about. He was often asked to live off of difficult deep shots. 27.5% of his targets were throws 20-plus yards downfield, the highest rate in this class. The heavy diet of low percentage targets hurts his overall numbers. Yeah. He only ran 13% of his routes from the slot. He posted a 5.5% drop rate, which is 35th in the class. But the 4.4440, 78th percentile speed score, 83 percentile explosion score, and one of just 6 early declare receivers in this class. He's only 21 years old until June. He'll turn 22 in June. And I think he fits in well with the rest of the receivers on this roster because Calvin Ridley is the guy you're describing that gets open and catches the ball, creates a lot of separation, and can beat man coverage consistently and can even demand double teams. Tyler Lockett, your savvy veteran who just finds a way to get open and can help teach these receivers how to work off script really well. Van Jefferson is probably your third starting receiver in 11 personnel to begin the year, and he probably lines up as your X to begin the year.
Yeah,
but how long before the Titans start to rotate those guys more frequently and give other players a chance, whether it's DK playing him outside a little bit, whether it's let's let Calvin play the X a few snaps and get these other guys rotated in, or Ayomanor, if he impresses early enough, he's a guy that could carve out a role for himself as a rookie, and then if he does that, he would really be able to have a chance to take off in 2026 and beyond. So
you don't have a lot in front of him, right? I think that's the thing. You don't have a lot in front of. That's what gives him a chance to compete at X.
Exactly. And Brian Callahan, you compare him to T. Higgins, or you compare this profile of player to T. Higgins, sorry. Brian Callahan obviously was there when they drafted T. Higgins, and if he sees T. Higgins light in Ayomanor, then it's going to work out, I think, because if anyone knows how to scheme up plays for that type of receiver, obviously it's Brian Callahan. So I think it's a great value pick with a high upside, but it does have a high bust potential here because this profile of receiver is very hit or miss in the NFL. All right, let's move on to the Titans' next selection in this draft. Maybe your favorite, round 5, pick 167, Jackson Slater, the interior offensive lineman out of Sacramento State. What was your grade for this pick, Justin?
Yeah, I'm going to go with an A. I'm super high on this pick, super high on this player. I know I'm a nerd because, we knew they were going to pick Cam Ward. This is the one that got me to jump out of my seat with excitement because I got to know this guy a little bit throughout the pre-draft process, did a great interview with him. Small school guy, super talented. He was downright dominant on tape. We get it. Sac State, not a whole lot of competition, but he was good anytime they played, big schools as well. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl. It just, fits in like a glove, right? Just so great down there. Blocking those 330-pound SEC defenders. He just really looked like he belonged. Then he goes to the combine, runs like a sub-5 at over 300 pounds as an interior guy. I just think he checked a lot of boxes for me throughout this process. I always thought he was a future starter. I put this out there throughout the pre-draft process. Titans fans didn't care about it yet because he wasn't a Titan, but interesting because I think, he played a bit of everywhere. Didn't play much center, but that's where NFL scouts see him playing. He told me that. Scouts told me that. They think he's got more upside at center than anywhere else. When I look at this Titans offensive line, I took this take public because it's something I thought immediately when they picked him. You've got an aging guard on a 1-year contract on the right side in Kevin Zeitler. You got a center in Lloyd Cushenberry who's coming off a serious season-ending Achilles. That's a serious injury to come back from. That's a tough one. I look at Jackson Slater. I think he gives you immediate depth at both those spots. Ideally, he doesn't have to play right away. But when I look ahead to 2026, whether it's at right guard or center, I think he's going to be a starter as a second year. I really do. And a lot of people are going to project that at right guard because, Zeitler's 35, whatever he is, 1-year deal. I'm going to go a bit bolder and project it to be at center. Mike Borgonzi has moved on from a lot of the Rand Carthon moves in one offseason, right? Traded Kenneth Murray, cut Cheeto Awuzie. We didn't really, we didn't see the Cheeto move coming. Let's be honest. I don't think anyone saw that coming. With Murray, we projected a little bit, but it wasn't a sure thing. Lloyd Cushenberry, 4 years, $50 million, huge contract from Rand Carthon, one of the highest paid centers ever. Let's be honest about that move. Lloyd Cushenberry, we didn't want to talk about it early on because I don't think we wanted to admit it. He was playing just okay. He wasn't downright dominant. He was like league average, which, it's okay. It's fine.
For the Titans, that's amazing.
Right, especially on the O-line up front, what they were dealing with at right tackle, right? So it's like, he was just okay, and now he's got an Achilles. Like, if he's not good this year, or if he's even if he's just okay, I think there's a great chance the Titans cut him next offseason. I already looked into it. Post-June designation, $8 million in savings. And if you do it before that, it's like $7 million in dead cap, so it's not a total disaster. It's more fruitful if you do the post-June, but you can do it right away too if you want to. So really interesting. I think Jackson Slater is a starter as a sophomore, probably at center, maybe at right guard if Lloyd Cushenberry bounces back and they decide to hold on to him. I love this pick, man. He's athletic in space, great character, versatile. Well, anytime you find a future starter in the 5th round, that's a home run. I firmly believe the Titans have done that here.
I'm with you, and that's why I also gave this pick an A, because I believe Jackson Slater is a future starter in the NFL. And again, I agree with all the things you said. He went to the Senior Bowl and really showed that he can play with this level of the NFL level of competition after his career at Sacramento State. And I think that that's exactly what they forecast with him, is that as a rookie, he's a swing backup on the interior O-line. He may not even be the first guy off the bench as a rookie on that interior O-line if somebody goes down. Maybe if 2 guys go down, that's when you get Jackson Slater involved, because they've added a lot of depth and a lot of competition for depth at that, the backup interior O-line spots. But this is a redshirt year for him where he's going to get to go work with Bill Callahan and really refine and perfect his technique. And then going into 2026, he is a starter on this offensive line, and that's why I gave this pick an A as well. All right, we got 2 more to cover. This next one for me will be quick. I don't really have hardly anything to say about 6th round pick, 183 overall, Marcus Harris, the cornerback out of Cal. Not familiar with this player really at all. I know that he had good ball production and was a great athlete, but I'll turn it over to you to talk more about him. I gave this pick a C grade because I'm sort of trying to be neutral here. It's like, well, they need depth at cornerback. They waited until the 6th round to draft one. If you're going to wait till the 6th round to draft one, draft a guy with athleticism and ball production. I don't know anything else about him. I think in 2025, he's a very high-level special teams contributor. I think that's how he gets on the field as a rookie. I don't think he's Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in the sense that he's going to come play, half the season as a starter, and they don't need him to, depending on what happens with L'Jarius Sneed. So what was your grade for this pick, and what do you know about Marcus Harris?
Yeah, I went with a C too, not because I don't like the player. It's a late-round pick. We've got to be honest about these things, right? What I know about him, I interviewed him for the Draft Network. I think I was probably the only person in Titans media who knew anything about this guy. Not that I blame anyone, because why would you know 6th round corner? But he was at Idaho previously, I believe it was. So transfers over to Cal. Thought he played his best ball this past year. Had 7 pass breakups, had 2 picks, 46 tackles for them, made some plays around the line of scrimmage. He was very aggressive in coverage. Again, I thought it was his best season. I thought he took that step up and handled it well. I had a good pro day as well, really good pro day. Ran a 4.38 at the pro day, so he displayed some athleticism there. I think he's going to be a good football player. A good quality rotational guy. Give them depth. I think he's versatile too, inside, outside. I think his best fit is probably the nickel. So you've got a backup to Roger McCreary there this year. McCreary's entering a contract year. They should keep him, but woulda, shoulda, coulda. You never know what's going to happen. They needed corner depth, but it wasn't an early priority for me, so I'm glad they waited till later. They got a guy here who's going to come in and make the roster.
Yeah, so there you go. He's definitely going to play special teams as a rookie and maybe be, like you said, a backup to the slot, the nickel corner position there. Okay, well, last pick of the draft. I love this pick, Justin. The Titans, with the 6th round pick, 188 overall, 5 picks after they selected Marcus Harris, they take running back Kalel Mullings out of Michigan, who told media that he was named after Superman, Kal-El. So Kalel Mullings, who was a guy that was Michigan's RB2 to start the season. Donovan Edwards, maybe you've heard of him. He was on the cover of NCAA 25. This guy took his job in the middle of the year. He wasn't insanely productive because it was a 2-back backfield there at Michigan. But I just remember, Justin, I was in Las Vegas late in September last year, and I put a little bet down on Michigan to cover the spread against USC. And you know what happened? I watched this whole game. Kalel Mullings took over and dominated in this game. He is a guy who he didn't do any athletic testing throughout the pre-draft process. And some people are calling him like a bruiser who doesn't have breakaway speed. Well, I watched this guy break off 50, 60-yard touchdowns all season long for Michigan. I don't know if he has like NFL breakaway speed, but he definitely has the ability to finish long runs in the end zone. Maybe not every time. Maybe he'll get caught from behind from time to time. But he's also a short yardage bruiser. And he's really good in pass protection. I think that Kalel Mullings is a great pick in the late 6th round for a team that said they wanted to add a running back with this kind of profile to their room. Like, this is the perfect guy I think that they could have added this late in the draft. So your last pick, you're not spending huge draft capital on a position that doesn't typically have a high value. And Tyjae Spears has had an injury history. He doesn't have an ACL in one of his knees, but more concerning is he's had a lot of concussions in his career so far, a short career so far. Tony Pollard, every year a running back gets older in the NFL, the chances that they drop off increase. I think Kalel Mullings could have a potential role this year, minimal snaps role, but 5 to 7 carries a game on average. That starts off as like 0 carries for the first month of the season, and by week 18 is like 10 carries possibly, depending on the health of everyone else around him. He's a former linebacker, so I think he's a day one contributor on special teams again, and he's a high football character, a very big theme of this draft class. I really love this pick. I gave it a B+ because we're talking late 6th round. Is there even such thing as an A in the late 6th round? Maybe if a round 2 guy falls to you there. But I really like this pick, and I think he's going to be a guy who I think he's going to be a good NFL running back, and I think he contributes again day one from special teams. So I gave it a B+. What did you give the Kalel Mullings pick, Justin?
I went with a C. It's a late pick, so I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit, or C+ maybe. You'd make me feel like a genius. I wish you could go back and find it and clip it for Twitter. I said his name on one of our pre-draft shows. I talked about the Titans looking. I know I did when we talked about what kind of running back they'd be looking for. I said, I remember saying maybe a Kalel Mullings. He's 6'1", 226. That's the profile they were looking for. And Damian Martinez was on the board at the time that they made this pick, right? They could have reunited. They took Kalel Mullings instead. Again, 6'1", 226. He's what they wanted in a number 3 running back. A bruiser, short yardage, between the tackles, punishing runner. This is not going to be popular on here. It reminds me a little of Hassan Haskins, right? Like, I think he's got a bit more rushing ability, but I also think right. Yeah.
Scout the name, not the logo, Justin.
Well, I think he's going to be a good special teams player is why I say that. I think he's going to be a change of pace. I think he's got a bit more upside than Hassan Haskins did as a runner. But between the tackles, I'm going to pump the brakes a little. That's why I'm going like C+. I don't think he's nearly as talented as a Tyjae Spears or Tony Pollard. But if Spears gets hurt, I think he can come in and be that number 2 to Tony Pollard. Just a couple carries per game, right? In that scenario, I think right. Pollard's a workhorse. But he can come in, like you said, he can block on and pass protection. He'll play special teams, short yardage, 3rd and 1, 3rd and short, 4th and goal at the goal line. There's a role for him. We found out very early, I think Easton Freeze might have been one of the first ones to say it, that eventually in this draft, they might look for a short yardage guy, change of pace. I think they have found one in Kalel Mullings.
Yeah, so I really love this pick. This was maybe my 3rd favorite pick. If I had to rank the picks in order of how much I loved them, it was Cam Ward, Gunnar Helm, Kalel Mullings, Kevin Winston Jr., Eric Ayomanor, Femi Oladejo, and then I guess a toss-up between the other guys, Marcus Harris and Chimere Dike, and did I forget one? I don't know. There we go, Justin. We have graded the Titans draft. What would you give this class as a grade, overall grade? What would you give it?
Yeah, I'm going with like a B+ probably, right? I hate grades this early, to be honest with you, because I think it's mostly clickbait to get people to just read your content. And
well, that's why we titled this episode "Grading the Titans Draft Class" so that everyone would click. So thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate you.
That's
so
funny. We hooked you in, suckers. No, I mean it's like we'll see, right? Like 2-3 years from now, we'll know better. But I like most of the players they took, right? I think we've been fair and honest. We didn't like the DK pick very much. We've been critical about some of the things they did. We've talked about the floors as well as the ceilings for all of these guys. So, I like what they did. I think that you got to get at least 3 future starters out of a class, right? I think, I think Cam Ward is for sure one. I feel so good about Jackson Slater being one. And I'd be shocked if at least one of Kevin Winston and Femi Oladejo did not turn into. So if you get 4 starters in this class, you feel really good about that. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I give it a B+ as well because I think they did a good job. I think my favorite part of what the Titans did here was they stayed disciplined to their board. They never reached for a need. They consistently took what they believe were the top players on their board. And I think the high character thing, as you're building a foundation for a rebuild, for a reset roster, getting a bunch of guys that can be great locker room guys who love football, who have developmental upside, but also the work ethic and, again, the passion for the game to try to reach that developmental upside is a great foundation for this team that if they find 4 starters, but if all 9 of these guys are like solid role players on the team, and that's probably not going to happen, but if 6 out of the 9 become solid role players, at least, and you get 3 or 4 starters out of it as well, then it's a great draft class. Ultimately, if Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback, the way that we hope he can be, it doesn't matter what the rest of the class is. It's a winning draft class if Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback, even if the other 8 picks are out of the league in 3 years. If Cam Ward is the guy, this is a great draft for the Titans. That's what it all hinges on ultimately. But I do think they found guys that are going to be starters by 2026, 2027, at least 4. I would guess. Gunnar Helm could be added into that mix as well. Kalel Mullings could be added into that mix depending on what happens when the RB room, or at least a guy that rotates in and gets a lot of snaps and is a contributor. If Ayomanor becomes a super solid X, this is a tremendous draft, on top of everything else. Mel Kiper gave it a B+. Chad Reuter of NFL.com gave it an A. A couple of guys with the New York Post and USA Today gave it a B. Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports gave it a B-. That's the worst grade I've seen for this draft. Vinny Iyer, Sporting News, B. Rob Maddy, Associated Press, B. Pro Football Focus gave it an A. And the guys, NFL Trading Room gave it an A, and Mike Renner gave it an A as well. So a little bit of love was shown for this Titans draft class. I saw a bunch of A's floating around on Twitter, but mostly B's and B+, which, like you said, draft grades are absolutely idiotic right now because we don't know what these are stupid, but that's what we think of this draft. And Justin, tomorrow we're going to be back with another episode looking at the UDFA class because the Titans signed Xavier Restrepo, which sort of changes the entire outlook of the draft because now you have a receiver that at the very least has a great connection with your quarterback. And maybe he doesn't have a huge role as a rookie undrafted free agent who is slow, but he's a guy that knows how to find space. And what we're going to do on tomorrow's show is go through the whole undrafted free agent class, give our thoughts on each guy, and see what we make of these players and their chances to make the roster. I'll say it, as a little tease preview for that episode. I think Xavier Restrepo makes the roster. Any final thoughts, Justin, before we sign off?
No, that does it. This is a really long one. I don't know how too long, probably, but hopefully you guys stay tuned in for the whole thing, and we'll be back to talk UDFAs. Now, we're going to do a lot of draft content. Let's be honest. There's not a whole lot else to talk about. We'll probably do a year 1 expectations episode for Cam Ward at some point. That's a bit flushed out and longer than this. But I think what I also want to do, and I think you guys will enjoy, is have more of these conversations about the draft class, also with some guests. So, let's bring on a James Foster. Let's bring on an Easton Freeze or, people, Stoney Keeley, people we love, Mike Herndon, and talk about the draft class and just bounce ideas off each other, expectations and stuff. So we're going to continue covering this draft class in-depthly over these next couple weeks.
Absolutely. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you all. Make sure you're subscribed to the Music City Audible channel. Give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below. What was your favorite pick? What would you grade this class outside of Cam Ward? If your favorite pick wasn't Cam Ward, maybe let us know what your favorite pick was. But outside of Cam Ward, what was your favorite pick? And let us know what you think overall of this class. We appreciate you all. Thanks also to Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. I hope everyone celebrated the Cam Ward pick by heading over to Sinkers Beverages and picking up your favorite spirit or beer there. And until tomorrow, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.